element in the growth strategy of most economies and holds particular significance for Nigeria. Today on the program, that's going to be our focus, and I'm being joined on the show by the Director, Trade Promotion and Membership of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dele. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Harriet.
Thank you so much. Well, let's take a look at how the SMEs have, fared here in Nigeria. That's small, medium enterprises.
Yeah.
Now, in most economies of the world, the SMEs have been touted as a driving force. Is this also true for Nigeria?
To the extent that industrial development in Nigeria has not been what we had looked forward to, what we had thought it should be by now, despite the fact that even the government recognizes the fact that the SMEs will contribute more to the economy and will do more in terms of even socio-economic development. I will not say the SMEs have actually done as much as they should in terms of contributing to development, contributing to employment, contributing to availability of goods, quality of goods, and so many other things. They haven't done so much in Nigeria.
But why is that really happening? Because we know that we have the normal challenges, infrastructural challenges, but aside from that, I'm sure that at some point policies, and let's not even go to the policies just yet, funds that have been made available, like we know that the Central Bank of Nigeria will sometime this week be launching the MSME fund for entrepreneurs. So there have been such funds that have been injected to help SMEs to stay afloat.
Well, the truth is, yes, we are not, you said we shouldn't talk about policies yet, but then I think the major problem with SMEs, even if we leave the infrastructure decay and lack of infrastructure, there are also some internal problems even within the sector. Internal problems in terms of management capacities, in terms of personal capacity of the investors themselves, and then the competitiveness of the organizations themselves. This has culminated in dwarfing their contribution to socio-economic development in this country. So the external ones, of course, has to do with infrastructures, with governments, policies, and so many other things. But when you look inwards, the way most of these companies are managed make them unattractive.
These companies, we're looking at the staff strength of how many? SMEs, the staff strength isn't supposed to be so much, is it?
It's not so much. But
it's about how many?
Well, you look at sometimes even as low as 10. As low as 10, but most of the time you don't see many SMEs employ more than 50. But you see, when they are duplicated, they still remain the highest employers of labor. And unless you develop that sector, you're going to have the kind of unemployment problem we have in our country. Because you can duplicate them so much, you can have so many of them. But without duplicating them, without giving them the support they need.
But they've been getting the support, actually, and now we're going to get more support in terms of the funds that will be injected by the CBN.
Well, that is what the policy says on paper. But in reality, do they actually get this support? That is the question. There's so many policies that have been put in place. There was a time we had a NEF fund, which was really targeted towards SMEs. We have, I think even now we have the SMEs, an agency that is purposely meant to service the small and medium enterprises.
Even BOI too.
Yeah, the BOI also do something like that. I think at the time, even the CBN had a scheme for SMEs. Even before this one, they are now relaunching. Then at the time, there was even a policy for banks to invest 10% of their profit
in
SMEs and everything. But what has happened over the years? Funds have not been available. The biggest problem that SMEs themselves talk about is access to credit. And with the high lending rates we have in this country, you don't see them getting the necessary support. But when you look at it also at the other side, are they packaged in such a way to attract such funding? That is the internal problem we're talking about.
Well, you kept mentioning policies.
Yes.
We know that some policies have actually been put forward to ensure that SMEs, get to the pride of place in the economy. Now, what is the problem? Is it that there hasn't been proper implementation of this policy, or the people who are supposed to ensure that the policies are implemented haven't been thoroughly doing their job?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. Proper implementation in the sense that you have something very wonderful on paper, but when it's come to accessibility, when people are now ready to take advantage of this, you find out that the bureaucratic structure, it's done in such a way that it creates a lot of corrupt practices on the way. And at the end of the day, those people who actually need this fund hardly get it. And even some of the policies of government, you see, on one hand, government is doing things to protect SMEs. On another hand, you have a situation where we have a border that is so porous that any goods enter this country, and the same SMEs who are facing infrastructural problems here, who have a high cost of production and everything, have to face a lot of goods that are coming in here without paying duties, small goods, even inferior goods that they have to compete with. So at the end of the day, their competitiveness is quite low. So they are producing at a very high rate. Yes, even when they are bringing in something of quality, they are now competing against a product that is inferior and coming in cheaper. Then when you talk about the policies, talk about also patronage. Is government actually adequately patronizing these SMEs? What we see today is government agencies just give LPOs to contractors who jump into place and go to Europe and Asia and bring things into the country. Most SMEs are left here, nobody patronizes them. So that's probably, if you give them, if you implement a policy, if you put in a policy that's supposed to support them, improve their capacity, provide cheap source of funds, even if you provide all this and they produce and nobody is patronizing them, there's going to be a problem.
That's a very big challenge. One of the many challenges that you've mentioned. We have infrastructure, we have bureaucracy, we have border security, and then the fact that they probably are producing substandard products, which is why most people would not patronize them but rather go abroad. So how can that mindset change?
It will change if somebody leads by example. Government needs to put in a deliberate policy in this country to make, don't forget that you and I know that the biggest spender in this economy is still the government. If the government makes a deliberate policy to personalize the SMEs, let's take for example, you decide that the uniform of all military, paramilitary bodies in Nigeria will be bought locally and sold locally. Imagine the quantum, the size of business that will go to the textile sector.
But then you know that we also have the issue of substandard materials, which is the reason why they still take this, jobs outside for outsiders to do.
To an extent, I agree with you. We have the issue of substandard material, but we have agencies in this country who are supposed to tackle such. Now, the agencies are always, most of the time, more concerned with, they are more punitive in nature. You don't see them supporting SMEs to develop capacity, and that's exactly what I think they should be doing. Most of the time, the equipment that these SMEs are using to produce substandard can also produce the same very good quality and standard products. So why don't you support them instead of looking at sanctioning them, putting punitive measures in place and everything? Why don't you do something on improving the capacities of these agencies?
And what is the immediate way that can be done? Because we need to see something happen quickly in that sector.
Something must happen quickly in that sector if government is serious about economic development, because that is a sector in Nigeria that is dying. The average SMEs in Nigeria will die within the first 5 years. And it's a terrible statistic. So what government needs to do is, one, we cannot but talk about infrastructures. Power must be available and adequate. Power must be available and adequate, because when you look at how much these small companies are spending on generators and on fueling those generators, it takes so much of their so much of their cost.
Okay.
And if you take that away, you are basically empowering these people to put in that much money back into production.
Dele, can I make a suggestion?
Please.
What happens if, for instance, we have a private-public collaboration in a scheme like this? Will it make that sector reach enviable heights? Will it give us what we need from that sector